All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of Night Skies of Fort Collins. Once again, my name is Ben Gondres, and I am the Dome Theater Manager at the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. And it's my pleasure to get to bring this program to you each week, each Wednesday evening, to tell you a little bit about what you can find in the night skies above Fort Collins. Now, with that said, if you are watching from somewhere other than Fort Collins, that is totally fine. Hopefully, we have audience members from all over Northern Colorado and perhaps even the world. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind letting us know where you're watching from, we're always curious to know where people are tuning in from. Feel free to leave a comment with where exactly you are in the world to let us know where you're watching from. That would be awesome. So with that said, if you are not watching from Fort Collins, that is totally okay. Everything that I talk about tonight should be visible within your own night skies as long as you live in the Northern Hemisphere, and with some slight variations on times based on exactly where you are. For tonight's program, we are going to be using a piece of software called Stellarium as our virtual planetarium. And Stellarium is a really amazing piece of software that is actually free and open source, which means you can go to stellarium.org and download it for yourself to use it on your own computer, completely free of charge. It's awesome. And in fact, if you don't want to download it, there is also a web version that you can link to from there, and you can explore the night sky from right in your web browser. And this is a really useful tool to be able to look at the night sky from any location at any time. And this is really useful because you can use it to plan your stargazing trips. You can also use it to look at the virtual night sky. Let's say it's cloudy on the night that you want to go out and look at something. It may not be exactly the same, but you can always open up Stellarium and check that object out in that program, which is a lot of fun. And personally, I like to just play around with it and see what the sky looks like from anywhere in the world. It's pretty cool. Also, I wanted to mention that if you are joining us for tonight's program, we do ask that you consider making a small donation to the museum. We do rely on support from all of you to keep bringing these programs to you, and you can do that by visiting the website or the museum's website at fcmod.org/donate, or simply by clicking the donate button here on this video. All right, so I think with that said, let's go ahead and open up Stellarium so we can get started. So here is Stellarium. As you can see, we're looking west right now, and the sun is just about to set there. Perhaps you've noticed that the sun is setting a little bit later, or excuse me, a little bit earlier and earlier each evening as we move towards the fall equinox in September. And this, of course, is due to the tilt of the Earth on its axis. The Earth is tilted at about 23.4 degrees, and that is actually what gives us seasons. So in the Northern Hemisphere, in the summertime, the Northern Hemisphere of the Earth is actually tilted towards the sun, and that means in the Southern Hemisphere, it is winter. And the opposite, of course, is true in the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. The Northern Hemisphere of the Earth is tilted away from the sun, and the Southern Hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and move time forward faster than usual so that we can watch the sun setting here. And as we do, I wanted to let you know that the Perseid meteor shower, which I've been talking about for the past few shows now, did peak last week. However, there's still a chance you may see an errant shower, an errant meteor as it slowly winds down. Usually you can still see meteors in the sky for about 10 days after the peak of the meteor shower. So you could possibly see some meteors streaking through the night sky up until even this weekend. And especially with the moon reaching its new moon phase last night, which means it was completely dark, you might want to step outside and check out the night sky. Without the moon's light, you will probably be a lot, it'd probably be a lot easier to see some of these dimmer objects, especially some of the objects that I'm going to tell you about in just a moment here. All right, so there goes the sun setting in the west-northwest. And as we get towards the fall equinox in September, you will note that the sun is going to set almost directly west. And that's because on the equinox, the equator of the Earth is tilted towards the sun. So the Earth is almost straight up and down, if you will. Okay, so looking to the northwest here as the sun sets, we're going to let the time go forward a little bit further till just a little bit after 9 p.m. here. So we get rid of all of that glow from the sun. But you should see a very well-known pattern of stars over the northwestern horizon. Let's go ahead and slow down time. And this pattern of stars is what is called an asterism. And an asterism is not a true constellation, but it is a pattern of stars in the night sky that we can use to locate other objects in the night sky. And actually, before I mention that, I wanted to mention that there are 88 constellations in our sky. And I always like to just turn them all on and turn on the boundaries for each of these constellations. And these constellations are really useful in, as I said before, locating objects in the night sky. So it's very easy to spot some of these patterns in the night sky. And using that, we can determine where some of these other harder to find objects are located. All right, so let's turn back around to the northwest. And the asterism that I wanted to point out, you probably already saw it just now. I kind of gave it away, but it is the Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper is located here with these 7 stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the Big Dipper is an asterism that is part of the constellation of Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. And we're going to use the Big Dipper to find some other slightly more difficult objects to see in the night sky. So from the 2 stars at the end of the Dipper, this is kind of the bowl of the Dipper, if you will. From these 2 stars, which are Merak and Deneb, you can look right of these 2 stars by about 30 degrees. And I should mention that an easy way to measure degrees in the night sky is actually by using your fist extended out at arm's length. And when you do that, the distance that your fist covers in the sky will be about 10 degrees. So you can use 1, 2, 3 fists, excuse me, there's the camera, 3 fists to estimate about 30 degrees. So looking back at the night sky here, if we go 30 degrees to the right and kind of up in the sky, we will see this star right here, which is the star Polaris, or the pole star, or the North Star. And Polaris is perhaps a common misconception about Polaris is that it's one of the brighter stars in the night sky. However, it's not exactly the brightest star in the night sky. It's a 2nd magnitude star. And in the magnitude scale, 1st magnitude star is the brightest star. And then the 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th magnitude stars are progressively get dimmer and dimmer, with 5th magnitude stars being very difficult to spot with just your naked eye. And here we see the North Star glimmering, as it always does, right above, almost right above the northern horizon. You can see the N for north down here on the horizon. And Polaris is at the end of the Little Dipper, which is the constellation also known as Ursa Minor, or the Little Bear. Now, I'm not quite sure if I've ever seen a bear with a long, bushy tail like this, but I guess when you're working with stars, you got to work with what you have. So the only other stars in the Little Dipper that are even modestly bright are the 2 forming the outer end of the bowl. These 2 stars here. This is Phaircad and Kochab. And they are called the guardians of the pole, since they ceaselessly circle around Polaris throughout the night and throughout the year. Now, we often point out that Polaris does not move throughout the night. However, the North Star does actually move night to night. In fact, if you were to go out and photograph the North Star each night, or night after night, you would see that it makes its own little circle around the exact point of the North Celestial Pole. And the North Celestial Pole is located right here. You can kind of see it. Let me move the crosshairs there and zoom in a little bit so you can see this NCP here. That is the North Celestial Pole. So that is true north in the sky. And you can see that Polaris is not exactly on it. And so night after night, if you were to take a picture of it, you would see Polaris making a small circle around this North Celestial Pole. But where exactly does this movement, or in Polaris's case, lack of movement, come from? Well, Earth spins under the sky once a day. And of course, Earth's spin causes the sun in the daytime and the stars at night to rise in the east and set in the west. But the North Star, or Polaris, is a special case. Because it lies almost exactly above Earth's northern axis, it acts like the hub of a wheel. It does not rise or set, instead it appears to stay put in the northern sky. What's more, the star we know as Polaris hasn't actually always been the North Star. A motion of the Earth called precession, and you can kind of think of this as a spinning top. If you spin a top on a table, you can kind of think of that as the wobble of the spinning top, which causes our axis to trace out this imaginary circle that I've turned on here, which is called the precession circle. Thousands of years ago, when the pyramids were rising from the sands of ancient Egypt, the North Star was actually just an inconspicuous star called Thuban, located right here along this circle, that is part of the constellation of Draco, or the Dragon. And in fact, 12,000 years from now, the blue-white star Vega, up here at the very top of the screen, in the constellation Lyra, will actually be a much brighter North Star than our current Polaris is. All right, so let's turn off our precession circle. And so to find our next pattern of stars in the sky tonight, we'll do a little bit more star hopping to the south by drawing an imaginary line from any Big Dipper handle star through Polaris. So let's go ahead and use the star here, Mizar, in the middle of the handle. And if we draw an imaginary line from Mizar through Polaris, we will run into this W or M-shaped pattern of stars. And this pattern of stars is known as Cassiopeia, the Queen. And by following a line from Polaris through this top star, Cap, in Cassiopeia, this will guide us to a region of space. So let's follow this line from Polaris to Cap in this direction, and you should see sort of a square or diamond of stars. And this square or diamond is called the Great Square of Pegasus, and it's made up of these 4 stars right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is called the Great Square of Pegasus. Again, this is an asterism. It's not a true constellation, as it actually contains stars from multiple constellations. It contains stars from the constellations of Pegasus, which of course is the winged horse, as well as Andromeda. And the Great Square is used much like the Big Dipper to help you find other sky treasures. One of the most notable, and in fact tonight and this week would be a really good time to look for this because you should be able to see it with your naked eye, is the Andromeda Galaxy. And you might be able to just make out a fuzzy patch in the sky right about here. But let's go ahead and zoom into that region of space so that we can see that in a bit better detail. Hopefully you see that fuzz resolving into an image here. And this, of course, is the Andromeda Galaxy. The Andromeda Galaxy is kind of a sister galaxy to our own Milky Way. and it's actually how we've learned a lot about our own home in space. Also of note is that the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way Galaxy are actually in a collision course with each other and will collide with each other in about 4 or 5 billion years. If you happen to be around at that time, it should be a really amazing sight to see. There won't be a whole lot of collisions of actual objects because there's so much space between the stars and the galaxies that most objects should just pass by each other without hitting each other. However, it will mean that the night skies will be absolutely teeming with new stars. So be sure to bring your camera for that one. All right, let's go ahead and zoom back out. Now, when looking at the Great Square, people will often remark that it seems very empty. Here in Stellarium, we can see a handful of stars. However, in the night sky with some light pollution, it might be difficult to see much of anything within the Great Square. However, if you have a telescope or even binoculars, you'll get a much better view. And if we zoom in here, we can see that this square is teeming with very faint stars that are difficult to see with the naked eye, but you should be able to pick them out with binoculars or a telescope. Now, one of the most famous stars near the Great Square is known as 51 Pegasi, and it's located right here, right outside the square, the Great Square, and is also known as Helvetios. 51 Pegasi can sometimes be viewed with the eye alone, but it is a challenge. To make it easier, once again, use a pair of binoculars or look about halfway between the stars Chiet and Markab. Now, the reason this star is famous is because in 1995, astronomers announced that they discovered a planet around this star. Planets around other stars are known as exoplanets. Now, after a few months of skepticism from the astronomical community, it was confirmed that the first planet outside of our solar system had indeed been discovered. And this planet, which I've got a little animation here, this is an artist's concept of what this planet might look like based on what we know about it. We don't have any instruments or cameras that are able to see this far. So I just want to say this is an artist's concept of what this planet might look like. But this planet named 51 Pegasi b, it's a very creative name, is what is known as a hot Jupiter exoplanet. And hot Jupiters are planets that are thought to be massive gas giants very similar to our own Jupiter in our own solar system. However, they orbit much closer to their stars, making them extremely hot. And they are perhaps the easiest exoplanets to detect. However, they hold little to no hope of hosting life, at least as we know it. After further searching, we actually now know that there are 2 planets orbiting 51 Pegasi. And of course, we have found, since 1995, when this first exoplanet discovery happened, we've since found thousands and thousands of exoplanets around many stars near to us. And hopefully, in the near future, the James Webb Space Telescope will be sent out into space to observe some of these exoplanets, and we'll be able to learn a lot more about them. Again, it won't have a camera that will be able to take a picture of these planets. However, it will have instruments that will be able to tell if these planets have atmospheres, and even what the atmospheres might be composed of, if they might be oxygen-based like ours, or some other gases. All right, so let's move time forward now. Oops, let's leave those on. Let's move time forward a little bit more so that we can see another planet much closer to home, rising over the eastern horizon, right below the Great Square. And we're gonna have to go till about 10:30. Let's go to about 10:45 here. And hopefully you see this red star rising above the eastern horizon right here. And of course, this is not a star, but is in fact the planet Mars. You can find it right below the Great Square of Pegasus. And it is currently located in the constellation of Pisces, the fish. We're for some reason tied together with a ribbon. Now, I just wanted to address a myth that I've been seeing circulating around social media, and just let you know that it is not true. And the myth is that Mars and the moon will appear the same size on August 27th of this year. And I've seen this image accompanying this myth. And this myth actually has its roots in a real 15-year cycle of Mars that's peaking, giving us an excellent year to observe Mars in 2020. Although it's not true. You're likely to see the claim, perhaps as an email or as I said on social media, that Mars will appear as large as a full moon in Earth's sky on a particular date, often August 27th of any given year. Sometimes there's a suggestion that Mars and Earth's moon will appear as a double moon. I've also seen, and this just simply isn't true. It's not true in 2020, it's never been true, and it will never be true. Mars is just simply too far away to be the same size as the moon. However, Earth will pass between Mars and the sun, which means Mars will be at opposition on October 13th of this year. And the red planet will appear brightest in our sky, very bright indeed, and fury red around that time. And once again, when Mars is at opposition, it means that Earth is between it and the sun, which means it's at its closest or close to its closest point in the night sky. So, come October, you should definitely get out and check out Mars. And in fact, all this month, up until October, you should check out Mars. Make it true. I wish I could make it true. That would be cool if Mars would appear at the same size as the full moon, but unfortunately, just not possible. All right, so at this point, let's go ahead and turn to the south and check out a couple other planets that are gracing our night sky right now. And these are, of course, the bright planets Jupiter and Saturn, trailing right behind the constellation of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is the Archer. However, many people have a difficulty finding this very sprawling constellation. And oftentimes it's much easier to find the teapot, just kind of this section. So you can imagine this is the spout and the handle and the lid. And what's kind of fun about Sagittarius is that his arrow, or the teapot, or the spout of the teapot, is actually pointing directly towards the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And in fact, because the moon is so dark tonight and this week, this is a great week to get out and try to see the disk of our Milky Way galaxy. If you notice this, this band of cloudiness here, this is not actually clouds going all the way from Sagittarius up to the north to Cassiopeia. But this is our Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy that we live in. And in the summertime, you can see it high in the night sky in the middle of the night. And as I said, because the moon is so dark, this is a perfect time to go check it out. And of course, Jupiter and Saturn. Moving back to the eastern horizon, let's go ahead and move time forward a little bit farther. And we will see the last planet that we're able to see in the evening skies. Let's look to the northeast here. Oops, no, sorry. There it is. And this planet is the bright planet Venus, located in the constellation of Gemini, or the Twins. And last week I did tell you that you could see Mercury in the early morning skies. However, it is now behind the sun. So unfortunately, we have lost our view of Mercury until it reappears in the evening skies. All right, well, I think that brings me about to the end of my presentation here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. If you do have any questions for me, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will try to answer those. I will stay on for a couple of minutes here to see if any questions come in. But yeah, I hope you all get out there and get a chance to look up at the night sky and all of the amazing wonders that it holds for you. Hopefully you can find the North Star, the Little Dipper, Cassiopeia, and the Great Square of Pegasus. And like I said, perhaps even the Andromeda Galaxy. I think I'm going to go try to check that out tonight as long as these storm clouds clear up. We shall see. And if no one does have any questions for me, please do join me again next week. I do these shows every Wednesday evening here on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live. You can follow the museum's YouTube page. And we have a lot of other programs that we do on Facebook and YouTube as well, including Story Time for little ones. We've got a Discovery Live, Ask an Expert coming up next week. So we will have some sustainability and solar panel experts coming on that show. And you can ask them all the questions that you might have about those technologies and what we can do to be more sustainable in our everyday lives. Thanks, Jill, for coming. Thanks, Bob, for the compliments. Excellent. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions come up, but if you do have any questions later on, these videos do stay up on our Facebook and YouTube, and so you can always come back and watch them again if you want to. You can share them with your friends, and you can always leave comments after the fact, and I will try to get back to those comments as soon as I can to answer your questions. Awesome, well, I hope everyone has a great night, and as always, keep looking up. We'll see you guys next week.